they asked me like, oh, like, are you a writer? And I had like such a hard time saying yes. Like I couldn't say yes for some reason. I was like, oh, well, like, I don't know. And the person that I was with, one of my friends, she was like, yes, she is. Like, she's fully been published. Like, she is a writer. And my friend and I were talking about it on the way home. This, like, idea of, like, imposter syndrome and not being able to, like, take on these labels for yourself, especially within art. So it just didn't seem like something I could, like, claim to be, because I also didn't feel like I was like an author to like anything. But I think ever since then, like being able to reflect on that and seeing like some of my own friends who do their art and like in their mediums, like you can take on these labels and just like accept them. But it's hard to do. Like I still feel weird sometimes saying that.
One of the things that I might read for you is called Romanticizing is My Hobby. And I like illustrate so perfectly like this relationship and like all the feelings and things that you do and what it feels like, and like there's like a lot of metaphors of just like what love can look like romantic love can look like, but it like isn't real. I think I just like write about like ideas I like, or like I'll write a story without telling the actual story of like this happened and this happened and this happened, but I'll like take like something that I'm like really interested in, or like an idea or a concept that I'm like, ooh, that's kind of cool to write about, and then I'm gonna write about how that like might feel for somebody, even if like I didn't feel it myself. I used to love reading magazines so much. Like at my parents' house, I have like stacks of like Teen Vogue, Cosmo Girl, and then Cosmopolitan. 13 going on 30 when she like wants to be like, I can relate to that so much. Like I really wanted to like write articles for people who were like me. I feel like I got so much insight from that on like what life could be like, and an idea of like, oh, this is how all teens are, so this is how like I should be. In 10 Things I Hate About You, that poem literally, like, I think influenced the way that I write poetry. Or Taylor Swift's lyrics. Like, this is it. Like, I'm still like kind of a teenager sometimes. More recently, Hira Lindsay Bird has been brought to my attention. There's just like a very wacky sense of humor in it too that kind of comes out of left field. That it's not like a punchline type of humor in writing, but more like, oh, that's weird. I take a lot of notes in my phone if I'm like out with friends or I'm just like out in the world, and then I have a random thought or something that I'm like, I want to remember that, then I'll like immediately like write it in my phone or in my notebook, and just like expand on it. I love making a good list of just like random things to think about, things I've kept and things I've left. I think it came up one time when me and my friends were talking about like wanting something back from like an ex. One of my favorite things I think on things I've kept was a Slinky. Things I've left, better communication skills. My black bean dip recipe. Headphones is on both. This one's cute. And like some of them are just ugly. This is, do you remember like when like that mustache era when like mustaches were so in? I think I've had some from when I was like young, like super young. I've been journaling. Yeah. Inspired by dreams, goals, experiences, wishes, but mostly you. March 21st, 2010. Dang, I have a lot of homework to do.
As a person, like I've gone through things, but like most of the things I've gone through are things that most people do. When I was like, especially like a teen in like my 13 going on 30 daydream years, I like so wanted to be like this person in like my young 20s who was like well dressed and like would go to like a cafe and like just write or journal or like be on like my fancy laptop. And I wanted to be that so badly that I think I have like manifested that in myself. I am actually writing things, but am I just writing things for the sake of that like brand? I don't know. I think like for a long time I didn't really like writing poetry, or I thought I didn't write poetry because it felt like, so I think because poetry can have like a bit of a stigma, I always felt like I couldn't write poetry because I couldn't be too abstract with my writing. Like I was very like, I'm quite honest and direct, and like I'll say things as it is and I'll swear like when I write, and that's just like how I write. So I was like, it's not poetry, that's just like words organized in like short lines. But then I'm like, that's poetry. I would like to get more into sharing my work. I think for so long I was writing just for me, which was fine, and like I really enjoyed that. I think once I started submitting things and being able to share that work with more and more people, like people were actually quite receptive and like responded in ways that were like, wow, like I really related to everything you said. And I thought that was like so powerful, especially because a lot of the writing I've been sharing more recently revolves around like femininity, or being like a woman of color and like battling with your sexuality or your internalized racism, or your own like with like westernized beauty standards and how you fit within those, like all of these like large issues. Not that I only want to share political things, but I find that there's a lot more like power when you share pieces like that. Just submitting to more like smaller publications and like smaller organizations that really need that content and are calling out for like BIPOC people, or like more women, or even like as specific as like Filipino writers. And I'm like, yeah, like I want to be like use my voice. I don't think I ever see myself being like my teenage dream of writing for Cosmo. I don't think that's gonna happen, and I don't really want to go in that direction.
We would go to comedy shows together and sit side by side. We would rest a hand on one another's leg and cheers to us committing to weekday plans. Then after, we would bike back home together and say, yours or mine. We would make a checklist of all the restaurants that are on the street I live on, then slowly eat our way through them over time. We would try to choose a favorite restaurant, unable to decide, but we would pick a few that we love, and they would know our orders, and they would know us as an us, and if we came on our own, they'd ask where the other is. We would listen to full albums and hum along, and send one another music recommendations to listen to when we're apart. We would play a song and say, this makes me think of you, then we would rewrite the lyrics to suit us. Then it would make me think of you even more. We would make pancakes on the weekend and make too many because the recipe calls for 4, so we would share the extras with my roommates because we all get along. I wouldn't feel bad leaving you with them when I run to the store to get maple syrup because they like you. They think you're nice, and so do I. We would silent read together at a coffee shop and tell one another about what we're reading and what we think about it, and we would write our own stories and read them out loud to one another. I would write poems about how much I adore you, but never actually read them to you because they're too soft, because they're too real, because they're too naked. We would meet for an ice cream right before the place closes and share 2 flavors because we both couldn't decide. We would burn candles, burn joints, burn cigarettes late into the night. We would tell our secrets when it's dark because the light is down and our guards would fall with it. We would share a bottle of wine between us, but it wouldn't be equal because we drink at different paces. Then we'd accidentally get drunk, surprising ourselves each time, although the same thing happens each time. We would dance in the moonlight and listen to that song when we get inside. We'd lay in the grass outside and lay on the floor inside. I would wink at you in public and smile from across the room. We would sometimes dress the same way without meaning to, and joke about one of us needing to change but never doing it because it's actually kind of funny. We would watch silly movies that make us feel nice and remind us of our younger selves. We would wrap up cozily in blankets and choose a series to binge, while we each hold our own bowl of popcorn
because we like different amounts of butter on it. We would look at art, buy art, make art, and inspire one another to pursue our art, whatever that looks like. I would get mad at you when you forget the little details about me, and you would get mad at me when I don't prioritize you and your feelings. I would forgive you when you remind me of the inside jokes we have, and you would forgive me when I show up unexpected to say hello. I would cry at night when you don't call me back, and you would slam the door, and when I don't show you how much I care. I would complain about you to my friends, and you would joke about it to yours, even though you're angry. But we would come back to one another after it all, because we both know we're better than this, and maybe we talk about it, but maybe we don't, but hint at it by talking about how we're bad at talking about things. And I would write about the way you do the things you do in the silly way that you do them, and you would illustrate the way that you feel. Then I would write about the way you are, who you are, but I can't write that part just yet, because you don't exist. LOL. I feel like that fits quite nicely into what we talked about.